Hello everyone, and thanks once again for joining us now for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic. We've got winter weather advisories out here for the Yukon Delta on up the east side of Norton Sound. Next storm coming up, and winter storm warnings are out for St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast, south side of the Seward Peninsula, as well as the north side there around Shishmaref. And that's out actually through Sunday for those areas. And this wind advisory, or winter weather advisory actually, for northeast Prince William Sound, mostly in toward Thompson Pass for gusty winds and areas of blowing snow, reducing visibilities. That's out through tomorrow. I'm sorry, not through Saturday. That's out through Friday. These are out through Saturday. And for the southeast coast here, winter storm warning for heavy snow here in the Juneau area. That's due to end at 6 p.m. Kind of actually rain falling in Juneau now. So it looks like the heaviest snow has ended, and it's changing over to rain as warmer temperatures move in. But the winter weather advisory for snow in toward Hyder and Stewart down here, that's out until I think it's out all evening and until tomorrow morning for those areas. Is that upper level low, and snowfall levels will be lowering once again later tonight as the colder air comes in behind the system. But it's precipitation will be slow to end there and already drying out, or will start drying out up to the north. And up to the north, east or the northeast Brooks Range, winter weather advisory out through tonight and maybe a portion of tomorrow, and then the winter storm warnings here for the Kobuk Valley, Noatak Valley area, Selawik, Kotzebue. As I mentioned here, the Bering Strait coastal areas, those are out through Saturday. With the storminess continues to move south to north here across eastern Bering Sea, and then start to take a turn to the northeast here when it gets up to this latitude. Anyway, satellite pictures, satellite loops here. We've got weakening system today, really falling apart especially from what it was yesterday. Right over the Seward Peninsula there, still areas of light snow all through this zone, a little bit into the western interior, but nothing heavy. And a little bit of a break here from Bristol Bay and on up across the Yukon Delta. And then the next storm, low center way out there to the west-northeast of the Komodorsky Islands. That pushing wind and precipitation eastward, and some snow moving into the Pribilofs this afternoon, with winds kicking up 40 to 45 miles per hour there, St. Paul and St. George. And winds gusted as high as 60 miles an hour this afternoon. Had the front with nearly an inch of rain falling at Adak, and about 50, 60 mile an hour winds as well at Shemya, with showery conditions. Clouds increasing here over the Alaska Peninsula. Some sunshine in Bristol Bay and at Kodiak Island, and up into south central Alaska as this area, this low pressure area, tracks eastward. Snow ending from west to east, and skies clearing from west to east here into the Cook Inlet Kenai Peninsula area, and low tracking in toward the northern panhandle, front pushing inland now, and rainfall not all that heavy, about half an inch falling at Sitka, 2/3 of an inch up there at Yakutat, water equivalent precipitation, and then Ketchikan had about 85 hundredths. And those were the heaviest amounts down there. So it wasn't, at least the ones that I saw in the reports, so not a real big rain producer, but definitely bringing some warmer conditions in. But that's going to be due to end as this tracks off to the southeast tonight, even overnight tonight. The snowfall levels will start to come back down, get into the colder offshore flow, north-northeast flow, especially aloft here over the weekend, and you'll be back to that dry condition once those showers end down to the south. Up along the Arctic coast, very weak trough, bringing some light snow up here, mostly from about Dead Horse eastward, possibly New Ixit, on over toward Barter Island, but light amounts there. Otherwise, high pressure building here and developing over the northeast interior, and this system tracking eastward toward the northern panhandle, and that producing pretty gusty winds as well. Seward clearing skies, and winds out of the north gusted to 50 miles an hour today. And for Valdez, they're getting 40, 45 mile an hour wind gusts out of the northeast. Thompson Pass, though, seeing 63 mile an hour gusts. And Pilot Rock, there south of Seward, had 55 mile per hour gusts. Some pretty windy areas here, strongest in the Channel Gap areas. And that's going to continue through tonight and then diminish tomorrow over the Prince William Sound area, but stay quite windy. And they'll be on the increase there for northern Lynn Canal and the northern Panhandle. But you can see this northwest flow cleared it out really nicely here for Kodiak up into Kamishak Bay and on up actually into the Susitna Valley. Weakening low here in a trough, diminishing areas of snow, but they persisted into the afternoon here, but amounts were quite light. That's going to continue to weaken. And then got high pressure starting to strengthen here south of the Alaska Peninsula. And this next front, this storm will be tracking, or the low center will continue to push north for tonight, heading right up to the Russian Far East coast, like many have here over the last 6 to 8 weeks. And the front, snow and blowing snow, winter storm warnings out again for the St. Lawrence Island area and eventually on up to the Bering Strait coast. Otherwise, leftover snow showers west of the Alaska Range, really isolated up over the northwest, and warm air coming up, riding in on those southerly winds, rain for the Perbeloff's gale force winds, all the way down to Adak and Atka. And for the southeast coast here, you can see precipitation sliding off to the southeast, tightening up gradient there. That'll continue through tomorrow. Pretty good north to northeast winds, especially in the channeled area, seeing the highest gusts. Starting to lighten up over Prince William Sound, Valdez area, as well as the eastern North Gulf Coast. High pressure really entrenched here, especially aloft, good upper level high developing over the southern interior. And that's going to keep all this storminess directed northward. Clear skies, light winds, kind of chilly temperatures from the Gulf of Alaska all the way up to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Different story in the west here, snow and blowing snow across the west central interior, Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island, right up into the Noatak Valley to about Point Lay, and break right through here. Continued southerly flow brings light rain, fog, and drizzle on up to the Alaska Peninsula. And another system develops and comes northward, right just west of Adak. So could see maybe a narrow band of storm force winds. Definitely gales with this system as it pulls northward. It's got really good upper support in the winds there. So it wouldn't possibly storm force winds wouldn't be out of the question. And then not so strong northerlies on the back side there with lower freezing levels for mostly snow. And then for Saturday, first day of the weekend, that system goes due north there, like the other ones, just following really just most of them, into the Russian Far East coast, and warm air surges northward here. Pretty good chance of seeing nothing but plain rain into St. Lawrence Island, Nome area, south, of course, of the Perbeloffs, eastern Aleutians, and another warm front brings more rain and gusty winds up in the Alaska Peninsula. Could see gusts 50, 55 miles an hour at Cold Bay, especially once this low center gets a little farther north Saturday evening. Otherwise, high pressure, strong high pressure here, 1,034 millibars over the Copper River Basin and up over the Yukon. Sunny, breezy for the Panhandle. Sunshine, North Gulf Coast to Kodiak Island, Kuskokwim Valley, and into the Tanana Valley. And you start picking up some clouds here to the north with all that moisture taking a turn to the northeast there, coming over the top of the high pressure area there. And Arctic front up through here brings a pretty good chance of light snow into the central Arctic coast there, say from Wainwright eastward to Aliktok on Saturday. And then the southerly flow keeps the north slope dry coming off the range there. But on the south side, upslope flow, look for snow here back in the west. Could see fairly decent amounts too in the southern slopes of the western Brooks Range and along mountain areas there. Kind of breezy, mild, quite mild here, but dry, it looks like for the most part, for the Yukon, Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay areas, as that band of precipitation, really not all that wide. And then back behind the front, just some scattered rain and snow showers and kind of a band of snow showers leading in some colder air coming in from the Kamchatka Peninsula. That'll be rolling into the Shimianatu area. Winds, no factor at all. And for low temperatures tonight, coldest up over the northeast, anywhere from 20 to 30 below, and 15 to 25 below along the Arctic coast, about 10 for Kotzebue. Lower 20s here for the St. Lawrence Island area, lower to mid-20s Bristol Bay, 30s for the Alaska Peninsula and the Fox Islands, dropping down to Sitna Valley to about 5 below Copper River Basin, 20s, lower 30s for the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow, 35 to 40 for the southeast coast. Single numbers there, eastern interior, 40-mile country, a little below zero, upper Yukon Valley, eastern Arctic coast, 40 for Kodiak, and 30s all the way up to the Seward Peninsula tomorrow, getting about 31 for Gamble, upper 30s for the Pribilofs there. And otherwise, it looks like south central Alaska here, staying below freezing, at least through tomorrow, highs in the 20s. And moving on to Saturday morning for the low temperatures, we're below zero here in the east, Copper River Basin, all the way up to the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and either side of zero through the central interior, north of the Alaska Range, and then single numbers of Sitna Valley, lower teens here, south central Alaska, and 30 for Kodiak, much milder back here to the west, anywhere from 25 to 35 with upper 20s there all the way up to Shishmaref, and the afternoon highs shaping up like this. Strong upper level high right over this area here, so the clear skies and the northerly flow keeps it kind of cooler than the west, but the real cold air stays over in Canada. And southerly flow here, looking at highs 40 to 45 here for the Alaska Peninsula to the Fox Islands, 40 for Atka, and 42 at Kodiak, mid-20s here for the south central Alaska area, and maybe 33 out along the outer coastline of the North Gulf Coast, 36 Yakutat, all in the 30s there for the Panhandle, except White Pass Skagway maybe in the upper 20s. And it looks like a zero for the Fort Yukon area in the upper Yukon Valley. And then the, as I mentioned, rain possibly making it up all the way to the Bering Strait and the Seward Peninsula.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving into aviation, all of the, most of it, the marginal VFR and IFR is going to be out here to the west, is kind of reoriented as VFR. Begins to take over, or takes over, the central eastern interior and eventually the Panhandle. But tomorrow morning, we still got IFR over the southern southeast coast here, that upper level system sliding off to the southeast there. So it'll be improving from northwest to southeast throughout the day. And back here to the west, moisture, southwest, southwest flow right into the southwest coast up to the Bering Strait. Marginal VFR western interior, and then IFR trailing back to the central Aleutians. And for tomorrow afternoon, good conditions here, central interior into Canada, on down into Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast, all VFR. IFR here, Yukon Delta, Norton Sound, portions of the Seward Peninsula up to the northwest coast, and then back down into the west central Aleutians, another batch here over the Fox Islands. And you can see the Panhandle here really improving, just some lingering marginal VFR over toward Stewart and Hyder with good VFR elsewhere. And that's going to last at least into Saturday morning. That's going to last through Saturday and probably the weekend with the any lower conditions well off the coast. VFR, central eastern interior, and IFR, southern slopes of the western Brooks Range and the central western Arctic coast, southward through the strait. Massive amount of IFR out here over the Bering Sea. And then for Saturday afternoon, that diminishes a little or compresses, edges eastward just a tad, and sets up over the Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula, catches Nunivak Island, Yukon Delta coast, northward, again through the Bering Strait, and IFR there for Kotzebue Sound, the northwest coast, over to about Wainwright. VFR north slope, interior looking really good, as well as the Panhandle. And for the passes, Anaktuvik and Adigan, both VFR tomorrow. Lake Clark and Merrill VFR, but rainy, having some marginal VFR for a few hours in the morning, and then becoming VFR probably by noon or before. And for windy VFR, Isabel VFR, Mentasta also VFR, and Tanita VFR, Portage, Ceilings visibility is unlimited, VFR flying there through the weekend, and Chilkoot and White started off marginal, becoming VFR by afternoon. And for the freezing levels, again, like we've seen here, hugging the North Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island, and cutting through the central Panhandle, and then back up along the southwest coast, a little farther to the north now, just getting to the north side of St. Matthew Island, and 2,000 to 4,000 feet over the central Aleutians. Icing Again, with that good southerly flow, all the moisture is going to be out here to the west with the first system here. Areas of considerable moderate, western Alaska Peninsula to Unmak Island, and lighter amounts, pretty good zone here of rime icing, but of just isolated moderate variety, perbolofs up to St. Lawrence Island and into the northwest, and then that's streaming eastward over the top of the building ridge, just clipping the central Arctic coast. Jet stream, here's that building ridge here, kind of a work in progress. It's going to cut off into a pretty formidable high center over the interior by the end of the weekend. South to north flow here, 120 knots out over the Bering Sea, right up toward the Russian coast. This low sliding southeastward, improving conditions for the Panhandle. 9,000 feet south to north flow up to 75 knots here with this storm west of Adak, and 40 to 50 all the way up into the Chukchi Sea. And for the southeast coast, this guy sliding southeastward. Most of the winds here down to the south of the area, 15 to 20 offshore flow there developing for the Panhandle. About 25 knots, Prince William Sound, 25 to 30. Winds will be strongest Kodiak earlier in the day. Lighter winds under the ridge into the interior. 3,000 feet, high center develops there over the eastern Upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country. Anyway, offshore flow with a Panhandle, 20-25 knots there, and winds diminishing, as I mentioned, for Kodiak Island. Strong southerlies, 45 to, 60 knots there over toward Adak and Atka, 35 to 45 up north of the Bering Strait. And taking a look at turbulence, a massive area of considerable moderate here from about, Point Lane, maybe, call it Wainwright, through the Bering Strait, all the Seward Peninsula here, right down Nunavak Island and the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta area, as well as the Aleutians here, and back to the west, improving towards Chimney-Attu. North Gulf Coast mechanical turbulence, pretty moderate with those channeled outflow wind conditions, and that will be improving over Kodiak Island. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Brightest of the bright. Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We're here to help you find your way around the sky. With so many planets, stars, and constellations, where do you begin?
Our tip, start with the really bright stuff. We've picked for you the 5 brightest nighttime objects this winter.
Visible even from urban locations, these 5 celestial wonders are sure to capture your imagination and jumpstart your relationship with the universe.
Ready to head to the stars? Let's go.
If we're talking about bright stuff, of course we have to begin with the moon, #1 brightest nighttime object. How can you not be awed by the sight of a full moon rising above the eastern horizon, or a thin, delicate crescent cradling the darkened orb after sunset?
Next week, the moon is best seen before sunrise. It'll be in its waning phases and will slowly move towards new moon. If we advance time day by day, we'll see a 3rd quarter moon on February 25th. That's when only the left half of the moon is lit.
The moon will continue on its path around Earth and shift every day. Here it is on the morning of the 26th and 27th.
Whoa, what's that bright thing next to the moon on the 27th?
Is it a bird?
Is it a plane?
Is it a UFO?
No, that's the 3rd brightest nighttime object. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's find the 2nd brightest thing first. Now we've shifted our view to the southeast on the morning of February 27th. The waning moon is still next to our mystery object.
Ooh, the mystery is killing me. But I see something even brighter lower in the southeast. That is the dazzling planet Venus.
Venus is so incredibly bright because the planet is perpetually covered in clouds, and these clouds reflect sunlight much better than any other planet. Venus is over 100 million miles away right now, but it's still way brighter than any star or planet visible from Earth.
The moon will get closer to Venus on February 28th, and on March 1st, the moon will be next to the ring planet Saturn, which doesn't crack the top 5 brightest objects, but it's still way cool.
And then just before sunrise on March 2nd, you can see the 2 brightest nighttime objects in conjunction, the moon and Venus. Sweet.
Now we're going back to the night of February 27th to reveal what large gaseous planet with a great red spot will be next to the moon. Oops, did I give away too many hints?
I think you may have figured out this third brightest nighttime object is the planet Jupiter. There is no mistaking Jupiter's steady cream-colored glow. When you point a telescope at it, Jupiter reveals a hidden system of 4 moons: Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. The cloud bands and great red spot can also be seen with a larger scope. To find number 4 and number 5 on our list, we just need to face south any night this week at around 8 p.m. That really bright and twinkling star is Sirius, aka the dog star.
Sirius is seriously bright, making it the 4th brightest nighttime object. The name Sirius comes from a Greek word meaning searing or scorching, and it lives up to its name since it's twice as bright as any other star in the sky.
It's called the dog star because the star marks the nose of the constellation Canis Major, the big dog.
Number 5 on our list is a yellow star named Capella.
Ah, Capella!
Capella can be found almost directly overhead on winter evenings. It's the primary star in the constellation Auriga the Charioteer.
When you observe Capella, you're really looking at a complex system of at least 4 stars orbiting each other in 2 binary pairs. Imagine having 4 suns in our sky.
There you have it, the top 5 brightest nighttime objects: the Moon, Venus, Jupiter, Sirius, and Capella.
Wake up early and find the Moon, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn while you're at it.
And the stars Sirius and Capella after sunset.
And then challenge yourself to identify 5, 10, or 100 more celestial objects. The whole universe is there when you keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the ice edge today, still advancing northward a little bit here, and really no surprises expected over the next 5 days or so. Of course, with the strong south to north winds, it's going to just continue to be pushed back to the north. And moving on to coastal water forecasts here, northwest 40 there for the southern southeast coast, slowly diminishing throughout the day, and north 25 here for the central coast, and then back up northeast 30 knots for the north coast, seas up to 17 feet. Big increase in the winds, Lynn Canal north 45 sustained, gusts 60 knots, north at 30 for Stevens Passage, northwest 20 for Clarence Strait. And moving into Saturday, still north 45, lose the gusts there for Lynn Canal. A couple of very windy days coming up in that area. Northeast 25 to 30, small craft advisories on the north coast, northeast at 20 on the south coast, north 15, Clarence Strait, and still 30 knots for Stevens Passage. Prince William Sound, north 20 knots tomorrow, seas 4 feet. Eastern North Gulf Coast, north at 30 with 10-foot seas. West side here, northwest winds all the way over to the Barren Islands, on up into Kamishak Bay, all northwest at 30, seas 8 to 10 feet, and northeast 10 to 15 for Cook Inlet. And for Saturday, north winds at 10 north of the Forelands here, otherwise northeast 20, southern Cook Inlet, east 20 for Kamishak Bay, southeast 15, pretty light there for the Barren Islands, and really light here for the North Gulf Coast. Winds north at 10, same thing for Prince William Sound, seas up there about 2 feet, only 4 to 6 here for the North Gulf Coast zone. And for the Kodiak Island area here along the west side, winds coming down throughout the day, strongest in the morning. They'll be lightest in the afternoon or toward evening. So put 25 knots in there. Shelikof Strait, 15 out of the west. Same thing here from Sitkinak to Castle Cape. And then for the Alaska Peninsula, south and southeast winds on the increase, 25 to 30 knots, and southeast 15 in the afternoon for Bristol Bay. And then for the Saturday outlook, southeast 30 here for Bristol Bay, seas 6 feet. Gales across the Alaska Peninsula, 35 to 40 knot gales, and east 35 knots there, southwest to Sitkinak, southeast 25 up the east side of Kodiak Island, east 20 for Shelikof Strait. And for the Fox Islands, we've got south to southeast, mostly 30 knots, except north of Unmak Island, pick up some gales there, seas at 13 feet. Southeast 40 Adak and Atka turn east 40 here, out to about roughly Amchitka or Kiska, probably Amchitka. Then you go northwest at 30 west of there. And southwest 25 here for the western zones. And then gales there right around Amchitka Island, 30 to 40 knot winds out of the west here right across the central Aleutians. And then kind of turn west-northwest here in toward Nikolsky at 30 knots. But frontal boundary here, so in advance of that, southeast 30 to 40 across Unalaska Island. Southwest coast, south winds 30 to 35 knots with the gales. Pribilofs, gales, St. Matthew Island and the north side of St. Matthew or Nunivak Island, all the way up to St. Lawrence Island. Gale force winds southeast 30 for Norton Sound. That holds through the day on Saturday. 40 knot winds out of the southeast from the Bering Strait all the way down here off the southwest coast. 40 knots out of the southeast for the Pribilofs. Same forecast for the St. Matthew Island area, and seas around 20 feet. Up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, we got easterlies of 15, picking up to about 20 knots on the central coast, all the way down to Cape Beaufort, and then kick into gales from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales, southeast 35 to 40 knots. And for Saturday, those turn southerly, come down to 30 knots here. Brisk wind advisories for the Chukchi Sea area from Wales on up to Cape Thompson. Gales continue Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort. And then brisk wind advisories for southerly winds, central and west side, and the east side there more southwesterly, and coming down to 20 knots on the far eastern Beaufort Sea coast. For tonight, winds on the increase, continue to increase here along the out of the Copper River Delta, channeled areas of the northeast Gulf into Prince William Sound. Stays windy for Resurrection Bay, Seward. Increasing winds here over the northern panhandle. I'll be drying it out as you go into more of an offshore flow with this system sliding off to the southeast there. So it'll stay wet over the southern areas there through tonight. High pressure dries it out in the north here. All the storminess back to the west here for the next several days with winter storm warning conditions moving to St. Lawrence Island. That continues into tomorrow, and Saturday shaping up like this. Stormy in the west, not so stormy in the east.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.